Sometimes, the worst timing becomes the only thing that ever felt right. I was supposed to be gone by now, somewhere over the clouds, headphones in, watching a movie I didn't care about. But instead, I was standing in an empty airport cafe, clutching a lukewarm cup of coffee, watching rain streak across the glass like time running out. The flight had left 20 minutes ago. My seat empty, my plans irrelevant. And that's when she sat down. Not across the room, right next to me. Like the universe had decided I'd waited long enough to meet someone who would quietly rewrite everything I thought I knew about connection. She looked untouchable at first. Mid-40s maybe, dark hair tied loosely like she'd stopped caring halfway through, a book half open on the counter. Her jacket was draped over the chair in a way that said she'd been traveling too long. But her eyes, when they finally flicked toward me, held that calm, practiced patience of someone who had seen too much and still somehow chose to stay soft. "You missed yours too?" she asked. Her voice carried the kind of steadiness that makes you want to answer honestly. "Yeah," I said. "Guess the universe wanted me to slow down." She smiled, a small, reluctant curve, and looked back at her book, though she didn't read a word. For a while, we just sat there, strangers sharing the same pocket of quiet. The cafe smelled like cinnamon and rain-soaked carpet. Outside, planes cut through the fog, disappearing like promises. I don't know what made me speak again. Maybe the silence had grown too comfortable. "Do you think we ever really missed the right flight?" I asked. That earned me her full attention. She turned, studying me like she was deciding whether I was naive or just brave enough to ask stupid questions. "Sometimes," she said finally, "but sometimes we're just meant to wait for something else." Her words lingered longer than they should have. She introduced herself, Elena. She was flying home after a lecture, but the storm delayed her connection. "A professor," she said, though she talked like someone who'd forgotten how to pretend she had all the answers. We talked about books, airports, cities that feel lonelier the longer you stay in them. I noticed small things, the way she kept touching her ring finger though it was bare, how her laugh came late, like it had to be convinced. When she looked at me, really looked, wasn't flirtation. It was curiosity, recognition, maybe like she'd seen this version of herself once before, just younger and less certain. And I couldn't stop watching her hands when she spoke, elegant, restless, as if words weren't enough to hold what she felt. The minutes slipped away unnoticed. At one point, she asked, "How old are you?" 24, I said, waiting for that polite nod people give when they realize the age gap makes you temporary. But she didn't nod. She just tilted her head, smiled softly, and said, "That's enough time to have lived, and enough to start over." Something in her tone, the warmth behind it, or maybe the quiet ache, made my chest tighten. It wasn't supposed to matter. We were just two people caught between flights, sharing a table, a conversation, a flicker of what if. But it did matter. When the announcement echoed through the speakers, her rescheduled flight boarding in 15 minutes, something in me sank like the ground had given way. She gathered her things slowly, eyes meeting mine once more. "It was nice missing something for once," she said. And then she started to walk away. I almost let her. Almost. But then my phone buzzed. A notification from the airline. "Your flight rescheduled. Boarding got the shoe." Same as hers. I looked up, and she was already turning back, as if she'd heard it too. Our eyes met again, and this time, neither of us moved. The next morning, the storm hadn't lifted. Neither had the feeling that something had shifted, quietly, invisibly, between us. Elena and I sat in the airport lounge, waiting for yet another delay announcement. The air smelled like burnt espresso and jet fuel, the kind of mix that keeps you half awake, half lost. She looked tired but composed, flipping through the same book she'd been pretending to read since last night. "You know," I said, "most people would have gone home by now. I've never been good at leaving," she murmured, still watching the rain. Her tone held something brittle, not sadness exactly, but history. I wanted to ask what she meant, but she looked far away, like the question would break something. So I just watched her reflection in the window. Faint, elegant, a woman who carried silence like armor. After a while, she sighed. My husband used to say that. The leaving part. That made me still. Used to? She smiled faintly. Divorced. 2 years. He was a pilot, actually. I guess it's poetic that I still can't get off the ground. I didn't know what to say, so I said the wrong thing. You don't seem like someone who gets stuck. She looked at me then, and the corner of her mouth twitched. You don't know me yet. The yet wasn't intentional, but it landed like a thread between us, thin and dangerous. She asked about me next, maybe to balance the weight. I told her about my internship, my short stories no one read, the way I was flying to visit my mother after months of not calling her back. So we're both avoiding something, she said softly. Or someone I admitted. She didn't ask who. Maybe she already understood. Maybe she was thinking of her own ghosts. When she brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, I noticed her hand tremble just slightly. And for some reason, that small human imperfection made her feel more real, more reachable. We spent the next hour talking about everything but what mattered. Books, cities, old music. Each topic was a careful dance away from what we were both beginning to feel. At one point, she said, "You remind me of someone I used to know before life got complicated. Maybe you remind me of what I hope to find," I said before I could stop myself. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was alive, like the air itself had leaned closer, waiting. Then the loudspeaker crackled again, another delay. She laughed, low and disbelieving. The universe really doesn't want us to leave, does it? Maybe it's giving us time, I said. She looked at me then, really looked, and in that gaze was everything we hadn't said. The age gap, the risk, the quiet curiosity neither of us had the courage to name. Her hand was resting on the table. I didn't mean to, but my fingers brushed hers. A small electric pause. She didn't pull away. Outside, a plane lifted through the fog, disappearing into the clouds. Inside, neither of us moved, as if the longer we stayed still, the longer this impossible moment could last. By the third delay, we were no longer just two strangers stuck in an airport. Something had shifted, something neither of us had agreed to, but both of us kept feeding in small, quiet ways. We'd moved from a lounge to a quieter corner cafe. Rain still lashed the glass outside. Her hair was slightly damp now, soft waves escaping her bun, the kind of imperfection that makes someone look alive. "I should probably stop talking to you," she said suddenly, her voice steady but her eyes unsteady. "Why?" "Because I'm old enough to know where this kind of thing goes. And I'm young enough not to care." She laughed, once short, startled, almost angry at herself. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Then don't look at me like that," I said. The silence after that was sharp. It filled the air between us like static. For a moment, neither of us breathed. Then her phone buzzed, a call she didn't want to take. She glanced at the name on the screen, flipped it face down, and said quietly, "It's my ex." I try not to react, but something inside me burned anyway. Not jealousy, just something rawer. She noticed. "It's nothing," she said. "He just keeps calling when he's drunk. It's easier to let him think I still care." "That sounds exhausting," I said. "It's safer," she replied. Her words sat heavy between us. Safer. We both knew what she meant and what she was trying to protect herself from. But the universe didn't seem interested in safety. Because a moment later, my roommate, of all people, walked into the same cafe, suitcase in hand, eyes scanning for a seat. "Liam," he said, spotting me instantly. "What the hell are you still doing here? You were supposed to be in Chicago last night." Elena stiffened beside me, straightened her jacket, composed herself like she'd just remembered the world existed. "Flight delays," I said quickly, standing. "This is Elena," she said, extending a polite, professional hand that trembled just once. My roommate's grin turned curious. "Oh, the famous professor you quoted in your essays." She blinked, surprised. I swallowed hard. "You know my work?" she asked. He nodded. He's obsessed with your lectures. Talks about them all the time. I wanted the ground to open up. Her gaze flicked toward me. Unreadable now, 1,000 thoughts crossing behind her calm expression. When he walked away to grab coffee, she leaned in, whispering, "We didn't mention that." I didn't think it mattered. "It does," she said softly. "You're my student, technically." I opened my mouth and closed it. She stood, gathering her bag. This was a mistake. But as she turned to leave, her fingers brushed against mine again, just for a second, deliberate this time. Her voice was barely a whisper. Sometimes mistakes don't feel wrong until you try to walk away. And then she was gone, disappearing into the blur of travelers and rain. My roommate was still talking somewhere behind me, but I didn't hear a word, because all I could see was her reflection fading in the glass, and the faint imprint of her touch still burning against my skin. I didn't see her again until 2 days later. By then, I'd flown home, or tried to. I couldn't focus, couldn't write, couldn't shake the sound of her voice, saying this was a mistake. The words kept looping in my head like a song stuck between verses. Then, on a gray Tuesday morning, I saw her again, at a small book event downtown. She was standing under a soft halo of stage light, reading from her new paper on emotional dependency in literature. Her voice carried the same calm precision it had at the airport, but her eyes, they found me. Instantly, she faltered for half a second. Only I noticed. Afterward, I waited by the exit, pretending to check my phone. When she finally approached, she looked more composed than I'd ever seen her. Hair pinned, heels clicking, every gesture rehearsed. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I didn't plan it." Liar. The word was quiet, but it hit harder than any shout could have. I wanted to laugh, to say something light. But instead, what came out was raw. "I can't stop thinking about you." Her breath caught. "Liam, I tried to move on. I can't." And maybe that's pathetic, but it's the truth. She looked away, her hands tightening around her clutch. "You think this is simple? You think attraction erases the years between us? The rules? My job?" "No," I said, stepping closer. "But maybe it makes all those things finally matter less." Her composure cracked, just a little. "You don't understand what it cost me. I've spent years building walls so I wouldn't ruin anyone else's life, or mine again." "Then why didn't you walk away at the airport?" She didn't answer. We stood too close, the space between us pulsing with everything unspoken. Finally, she said, "You remind me of who I used to be, before I learned how to stay lonely." Her eyes shimmered, not with tears, but restraint. "Then let me remind you what it feels like not to be," I said. She inhaled sharply, as if I'd touched something I wasn't supposed to. Her phone buzzed again, that same name flashing across the screen. Daniel. Her ex. She silenced it immediately. "He's waiting for an answer about reconciliation." The word dropped like glass. I felt the jealousy before I could hide it. "So he gets another chance, and I don't." "It's not about chances," she whispered. "It's about survival." The storm outside had started again. Hard rain against the tall windows, blurring the city lights. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she took a trembling step toward me. "Say something," she whispered. I did. "I'd rather ruin my life than spend one more day pretending you didn't change it." Her eyes closed, as if the sentence itself was too heavy to hold. She reached up, her hand hovering near my face, not touching, trembling in that space between yes and no. I leaned forward, breath close, heart wild, and then someone called her name from behind us. She froze. The moment shattered. "Elena." The voice came from behind us, male, confident, too familiar. She turned slowly, already knowing who it was. Daniel, her ex-husband. He looked older than in the photos I'd seen when I searched her name online weeks ago, the ones from her university bio and old news articles. Same posture, same smile that didn't quite reach the eyes. "He wasn't supposed to be here. Didn't expect to find you so engaged," he said, eyes flicking to me with polite suspicion. Elena straightened, slipping instantly into that calm, professional version of herself. Daniel, what are you doing here? Your assistant said you might be at the lecture. I thought we could talk. Maybe dinner. His gaze sharpened. Unless you've already found company. I took a step back, giving her space. But she didn't move away from me. That single inch of defiance felt louder than words. Liam's a former student, she said carefully. We ran into each other by coincidence. Her voice was steady. Her hand, hidden by her coat, was shaking. Daniel smiled, the kind of smile that used to win arguments. Right. Coincidence. You always did believe in fate, didn't you? Something in me burned. I hated how easily he said her name. How he spoke as if she still belonged to him. Maybe I should go, I muttered, but she stopped me. Just a hand on my sleeve, quick and desperate. No, she said quietly. Stay. That one word changed everything. Daniel's expression faltered. You really want to do this here? With him? I don't owe you anything anymore, she said, her tone breaking just once. He looked at her, and then at me, and for a moment I thought he'd hit me. But instead, he laughed softly, almost pitying. You think he understands you? He doesn't. He's a kid, Elena. You'll break him, just like you break everything you try to love. The words landed like a slap, and for a heartbeat, she looked wounded. Then she stepped forward. Maybe, but at least he still makes me feel something. Silence. Heavy. Electric. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he didn't reply. He turned, muttered something under his breath, and walked out into the rain, leaving the door swinging behind him. When it closed, the sound echoed like a verdict. Elena exhaled shakily, her composure collapsing all at once. I didn't want you to see that, she whispered. I'm glad I did, I said. Now I know what you've been carrying. Her eyes glistened, not from embarrassment this time, but exhaustion. You don't know the half of it. What else? I asked. She hesitated, then, almost painfully, confessed. Daniel isn't just my ex. He's still the department's head. If he finds out there's anything between us, I lose everything. The air left my chest. So that's why you wanted to end it. That's why I have to. But even as she said it, her hand stayed on my sleeve, gripping tighter, trembling with all the things she couldn't say out loud. And I realized she didn't really want to let go. Outside, the storm roared back to life. Inside, we stood suspended, two people who just crossed the point of no return. It was almost midnight when she showed up at my apartment. I hadn't expected her. I hadn't even texted. After what happened with Daniel, I thought she'd vanish again, disappear into her world of control and consequence. But there she was, standing in the doorway, rain in her hair, eyes hollow and fierce all at once. Can I come in? She asked quietly. I just nodded. Words felt too fragile for what this moment was. She stepped inside, dripping rain onto my floor, still wearing her coat like armor. For a long time, neither of us said anything. The only sound was the soft hum of the city outside, tires and puddles, distant thunder. Finally, she spoke. I told him everything, she said. My chest tightened. Everything. She nodded. That I met someone. That it wasn't just a student. That it wasn't just a mistake. And he said I was throwing my reputation away. Her voice cracked. Maybe I am. She sank onto the couch, covering her face with her hands. I'd never seen her like that, stripped of control, trembling between fear and freedom. I sat beside her, careful not to touch. You didn't have to do that for me. Her hands fell to her lap. I didn't do it for you. I did it because lying felt worse than losing. That hit something deep, the kind of honesty that hurts more than love itself. Do you regret it? I asked. She turned to me, eyes wet. Every rational part of me says yes. But she exhaled a shaky, broken laugh. The truth is, I haven't felt alive in years. Not until that day at the airport. The room felt smaller, charged. My pulse was loud in my ears. Then what are we supposed to do now? I asked. She looked at me, long, steady, like she was memorizing something she already knew she'd have to forget. Nothing, she whispered. We stop before we destroy each other. I wanted to argue, to say love was worth the wreckage, but then she reached over and took my hand. Not as a lover, as someone saying goodbye the only way she knew how. Liam, she said softly, you gave me something I thought I'd lost forever, the feeling of being seen. That's enough. The words tore through me, gentle and devastating. I pulled her closer anyway, not to kiss her, but to hold her. And she let me, just for a moment, her head against my chest, her breath sinking with mine. Outside, the storm was easing. The world, somehow, was quiet again. When she finally stood, the silence between us wasn't empty. It was full of everything we hadn't said. She turned toward the door, then paused, her voice barely a whisper. If we caught our flights that night, I know, I said, we never would have met. She smiled, small, sad, beautiful, and left without looking back. I didn't stop her, because for the first time, I understood sometimes love doesn't stay so it can last. Sometimes it leaves so it can mean something. It's strange how quickly life goes back to pretending nothing happened. A month later, the airport looks the same as it did that night. Same rain-slick windows. Same coffee machine grinding too loud. Same endless announcements echoing over tired faces. But I'm different. I see her in every small thing. A woman in a dark coat, a hand brushing hair behind an ear, a quiet voice asking for black coffee. I know it's not her, but my mind still turns every stranger into the possibility of her. Elena left the university 2 weeks after she came to my apartment. Officially, she took a position abroad, a research program in Florence. Unofficially, I think she just needed to breathe somewhere her past couldn't follow her. She didn't tell me goodbye. Not in words, anyway. A single envelope arrived in my mailbox the morning after she left. No return address. Just my name, Liam, written in her careful handwriting. Inside was a single page. You once said maybe we never really missed the right flight. Maybe you were right. I think we both missed exactly what we needed to, so we could find the part of ourselves we'd forgotten. Don't wait for me. Just remember me kindly. I read it more times than I'd ever admit. Every word hurt and healed at the same time. And still, I went back to the airport today, not to chase ghosts, just to see what missing something feels like when you've learned to live with it. There's peace in that now. I sit near the same window where we met, coffee going cold again, rain soft against the glass. Across the aisle, a couple argues and whispers. A little girl presses her face to the window, counting planes. Life goes on exactly as it should. I smile small, real, because even though we didn't end up together, I can't call it loss. What we had, brief, impossible, unrepeatable, changed the way I understand love. It isn't always meant to stay. Sometimes it's meant to remind you that you can still feel, still risk, still hope. Before I leave, I take out my notebook and start to write. Not a story this time, a memory. The truth, exactly as it happened. I missed my flight once, I write, and met someone who made me glad I did. Outside, a plane lifts through the fog, disappearing into the clouds, just like she did. But for the first time, I don't look away. I close the notebook, stand up, and walk toward my gate. No more delays, no more waiting for something that already meant everything it needed to. And as the intercom calls for boarding, I can almost hear her voice again, calm, amused, forever in motion. Maybe we were never meant to arrive, Liam. Maybe we were just meant to meet. I smile to myself, and this time, I catch my flight. Did you enjoy the story? What part hit you the hardest? The airport meeting, the forbidden tension, or the goodbye that wasn't quite an ending? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? Romantic? Bittersweet? Real? Tell me, and maybe your story becomes the next one we tell together.